Let me start by acknowledging the presence of the Chairman of the Board of Governors, Honorable John Rwangombwa, Minister of Finance of the Republic of Rwanda. Honorable Governors, AFDB Group President, Dr. Donald Kaberuka, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm greatly honored to be part of this momentous occasion, and I'm pleased to address this 50th African Development Bank and 41st African Development Fund 2015 Board of Governors annual meetings. Kindly allow me to express my appreciation to the host government and the Ivorians for their warm reception and hospitality since our arrival. Mr. Chairman, the 2015 African Development Bank annual meetings theme, Africa and the New Global Landscape, is important as the continent embraces Agenda 2063 that seeks to promote inclusive and sustainable development in Africa. My discussion will focus on three areas, namely, I'll give an overview of the economic situation in Zimbabwe. Secondly, I will briefly comment on some of the initiatives that the government of Zimbabwe has developed in order to stimulate sustainable socio-economic development in Zimbabwe. Let me point out that as a developmental state, our role as government is to create an environment conducive for private sector to flourish and also to play a critical role in the provision of public services. We want to promote a private sector-led economy. Finally, I'll briefly comment on the support the African Development Bank has been extending to Zimbabwe. With respect to Zimbabwe's economic situation, Mr. Chairman, fellow governors, ladies and gentlemen, allow me briefly to talk about the economic situation in Zimbabwe. Let me hasten to say that I will focus on the most critical issues that I feel are worthy of sharing with fellow delegates. As some of you may be aware, we adopted a multi-currency regime in 2009 following the hyperinflationary conditions and economic challenges that we faced after implementing policies that sought to address the land question in Zimbabwe. The multi-currency regime took away the central bank's role and has imposed limitations on the application of monetary policy. We have been experiencing growth of the informal as well as the small and medium enterprises sectors. Such a structural transformation has had implications for the fiscal revenue collections as this sector operates outside the mainstream of the public finance system. I'm happy to report that, notwithstanding these challenges that we continue to grapple with, the economy has remained resilient. Let me, however, put the record straight. We cannot remain in a standstill position as an economy. We have lost more than 50 years of potential economic prosperity. We need to catch up, and this is possible if Zimbabwe's main binding constraints are addressed. Mr. Chairman, I attribute Zimbabwe's socio-economic challenges to economic sanctions, debt overhang, with external debt currently pegged at 6.8 billion as at 31st December 2014. I also attribute these challenges to the scarcity of fairly priced long-term finance for the productive sectors. Let me briefly comment on some of the initiatives that the government of Zimbabwe has been taking in order to stimulate sustainable development. I'll focus on our Zimbabwe agenda for sustainable socio-economic transformation, which is our economic blueprint, ZimAsset. I also touch on the international re-engagement initiatives that we have embarked upon, as well as the cooperation that we are receiving with our development partners. Zimbabwe's development process is guided by our economic blueprint, ZimAsset, whose main clusters and subclusters are food security and nutrition, social services and poverty alleviation, infrastructure and utilities, and value addition and beneficiation, as well as fiscal reform measures and public administration, governance, and performance management. We have made significant progress in implementing some of the policies and programs contained in ZimAsset under very challenging conditions, particularly on the back of limited access to new capital for the productive sectors, constrained industry capacity utilization, and limited fiscal space. Let me now turn to international re-engagement. The government of Zimbabwe is fully committed to the re-engagement process with the international community. We have already started the process, and we are reasonably happy with the progress. I will only comment on the staff-monitored program that we are implementing with the assistance of the International Monetary Fund, IMF. Government successfully implemented the 2013 and 2014 staff-monitored program, meeting all quantitative targets and structural benchmarks in the third and final reviews of June 2014. After this review, government and the IMF agreed on a 15-month successor staff-monitored program whose implementation began in October last year and is ending in December this year. The first review of the successor staff-monitored program, based on the 31st December 2014 targets, was done during the final quarter of this year. And I'm happy to report that we met all the quantitative targets and structural benchmarks under very difficult economic and financial conditions. Furthermore, the government of Zimbabwe is closely working with the IMF, World Bank, and African Development Bank in order to reintegrate Zimbabwe back into the global economy. We have since established a quadripartite committee comprising the parties that I've mentioned and I've already alluded to, under the chairmanship of Zimbabwe's Central Bank Governor, Dr. Mangudla. The committee has already started exploring strategic options for addressing the external debt issue and clearance of arrears, and as well as improving the external balance position. And it is expected to present its report to major creditors during the IMF World Bank annual meetings in Lima, Peru in October this year. With respect to cooperation with the African Development Bank, Mr. Chairman, let me also take this opportunity to express my appreciation to the African Development Bank for administering the Zimbabwe Multi-Trust Fund, ZIM Fund, that a number of cooperating partners, notably Australia, Denmark, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom, established in May 2010 following the cholera outbreak in 2008 in Zimbabwe. The fund came at a time when the country was facing huge challenges in the areas of infrastructure, power, water supply, and sanitation. Mr. Chairman, allow me to acknowledge the support Zimbabwe continues to receive from the African Development Bank Group under ADF 12 and 13. We sincerely appreciate the 70.3 million water granted approximately $105 million approved by the bank's board in December 2014 under ADF 13 for the period 2014 and 2016. This support will go a long way in alleviating infrastructure challenges in Zimbabwe. The 36.1 million grant earmarked for the rehabilitation of the Kariba Dam wall is also greatly appreciated. Given the structure of our economy, which is predominantly informal, I urge the bank to support players in the informal sector through access to capital, training, and skills development, with a view to nurturing them back into the formal sector. Would also want to commend the African Development Bank executive directors who visited Zimbabwe in February this year, who also took advantage of their visit to witness the launch and commissioning of one of the Zim Fund's projects. Let me also applaud the most recent joint visit by the World Bank and African Development Executive Directors and their advisors during the period 19 to 22 May 2015. The IMF was represented by the local office as the Executive Director could not travel due to prior commitments. We cherish these visits because they give our representatives an opportunity to gain a better appreciation of Zimbabwe's economic situation. In conclusion, let me conclude by acknowledging the role of the bank in promoting the region's development agenda. I'm aware of the region's expectations of the bank as we roll out Agenda 2063. Mr. Chairman, I would want to reiterate that the government of Zimbabwe is fully committed to the successful implementation of the Successor Staff Monitored Program. We are also fully committed to international re-engagement and resolving our external debt obligations. We need our creditor support during this difficult time. Finally, I would want to wish all the candidates running for the African Development Bank presidency post well. We are all behind them. May the best candidate win in order to lead this great bank. We are looking for a leader who will drive the developmental agenda for our great continent. I thank you for your kind attention.